Hi there. So a couple weeks back I made a video on how to do really well in your language orals and speaking exams. I kind of wanted to develop on this with a new video for tips for more general language learning and acing all kind of exams. So as I also mentioned in this past video, I was not taking French until I started college level, so I did International Baccalaureate. Before then I had pretty much no experience with French other than like the very basic vocabulary. So this obviously made it very, very daunting, and so I started off getting D's kind of for the first term, I would imagine. Very quickly though, through the tips I'm going to share, I was able to get up to B's and A's, and then through the whole of my final year I was getting A's and A+ in everything. So stick around if you want to know how I did that. So my first tip is kind of one of the most important, so I think it's important to get it out there first. Really take every single piece of homework, weekly quiz, any sort of test seriously. Even if it has absolutely no effect on your final grade, so for example any kind of homework or like vocab quiz, it's still so important to really take this seriously. Like I said, because I was so far behind, I really overcompensated for every single thing we had to do because I was so far behind and I really needed to catch up. So a random piece of a reading comprehension set for homework, I would spend a lot of time going into detail, learning extra words, which I'll go into in other points, to catch up. But this meant I was improving so quickly. And it was actually really easy. It didn't actually take that much extra time. It was just little things that snowballed into really fast improvement. And also, very importantly, with language learning, every single thing you learn is relevant. It's all cumulative. Everything that you're learning, even if it's just a random word that you see no impact on whatever your final exam is going to be on, you'll probably need it for something or other. So it's really worth being on the ball from the get-go, taking advantage of any kind of homework or vocab quiz you have to really improve your understanding of the topic. That's really going to help your revision in the long run, and also you're going to find in a few weeks or months later that you suddenly know way more than you did before. For my point number 2, whenever you see a word in a reading comprehension or a notebook or anything that you do not know, look it up and note down the translation. At the beginning this really seems like a lot of effort when you're just trying to read a reading comprehension, and like for me, every other word I did not know. So it's very draining to then have to look it up every time. But you're not going to learn otherwise, and what you will find is over time you'll need to look up fewer and fewer words. I can tell you for nothing, your vocabulary is going to improve so quickly if you do this. And what you can do to actually make the revision process a lot easier, maybe have a weekly set of words that you learn, or daily depending on how many you're learning. But then I would note them down on a post-it note and then put that post-it note on your bathroom mirror. From there, every time you're in the bathroom to do skincare, brush your teeth, or just wash your hands, you're going to see that post-it note, you'll just skim through the words, and that's an act of revision. So you don't have to reread, like have your notebook out and read, because that's really boring. But this is just a really easy, almost passive way of just reminding yourself what those words are. And then over time you can just replace the post-it note and you'll probably see there are fewer words on it every time, and your vocabulary will skyrocket. Leading on from that though, I will say please do not use Google Translate. This is probably something you hear your teachers say all the time, but if there's one thing you take from them, this is it. It's really gonna screw you over, I feel like. Firstly, if you're just looking up certain words, it's very likely to be inaccurate, even more so if you just type in full sentences in your mother tongue to get the target language. There's probably going to be so many instances where context could have been mixed up to give a completely different sentence that is just incorrect. It's a waste of your time to do this. It's much better to just know what you're looking for and just look up for certain words. So if you do need to have an online dictionary, I really recommend Word Reference. This is a really reliable source and it has so many different languages to use. Not only that, but it's really helpful if you need to look up verb conjugations. It would actually show you all the conjugations for different tenses. Really reliable, so helpful when you're writing, but it still challenges you to then create the sentence yourself. So a lot of people will recommend watching TV shows and films in your target language or with the target language in subtitles. This is incredibly helpful and I 100% recommend this, but I kind of want to use this point to talk about podcasts. I feel like this is a really amazing source of learning because there are a lot of podcasts that are just recreational, say a French podcast talking about fashion or something. You can use that and it's a really great way to hear French in a really casual way. But there's also a lot of podcasts very specific to language learning. For example, a podcast called Talk to Me in Korean, for Korean language obviously. This is entirely for people learning the Korean language, but it not only will teach you vocabulary, which is what you'll get from watching a Korean TV show, for example, but it will also explain grammar, sentence structure, verb conjugations and things like this. So it is so helpful, and every podcast will have a transcript, I believe, on their website, so you can actually read what they're saying in real time. So a lot of the time you can understand what they're saying but you'd have no idea how to spell it. So it's really helpful to have it in both forms, and each episode is pretty short, so it's just a small little tidbit of information that you can learn, and it's really easy to progress. So you can find podcasts for whatever kind of language you are learning, and I really recommend mixing it up between the recreational ones and the educational ones, and you'll really find that you're getting a really varied source of learning. Next, a point that may sound a little bit boring, but bear with me, really easy and really helpful. Reading articles, I'd recommend 1 article a day. They can be so short, but if you have to, maybe every other day or once a week. But what you will find is that you can really improve your vocabulary, but also you're gonna, over time, passively learn more about sentence structure and grammar in a way that perhaps you won't just from reading a vocabulary list. So I would recommend reading articles that you already have an interest in. So if you're really interested in fashion, you can find articles in your target language on fashion. So you still have some sort of interest in it, so it's not super boring. And then, like in my other tip, note down any word you do not know, put it on that post-it note so you can review it later. And like with all these other points, over time, the vocab list will get shorter and also your reading will get quicker. This will really help for reading comprehensions in the future when you're actually on a time schedule. And also just generally, you'll really notice how much better you are at reading and acquiring that language knowledge. And it's going to be so satisfying to see. And my final tip for you may not be applicable to everyone, but I do really think we can all do this in some way, is to practice with family and friends. Now, I was in a very privileged position. A lot of my family speak numerous different languages, and my mum speaks French, so I could practice a lot with her when I had oral exams, for example, coming up. But it isn't necessary to have to practice with someone who also speaks the language. Just having someone prompt you with questions and ideas for you to then speak just gives you the ability to articulate your ideas out loud in the language. And also a 2013 study actually demonstrated how important social interaction is in second language learning. So it really is worth finding someone you can chat to in this language. And also, this doesn't have to just be speaking. There's an app that I used to use called Hello Talk. It's really amazing. You can put in what your mother tongue is and the languages you're learning, and it's going to pair you with people whose mother tongue is your target language and want to learn your mother tongue. So say, I speak English and I want to learn Korean. It's going to pair me with Korean natives who want to learn English. It's a really great way to then message them. You can either speak in Korean or English or alternate. You can send voice notes as well. People can correct your grammar with certain add-ons on the app. It's a really cool idea. And for example, if you actually are confident in your speaking, but it's your writing you need to work on, this is such a great way to improve that in a really fun and engaging way. Not to mention, this really helps if you want to learn more of the casual vocabulary in a language that you won't learn in a classroom. This is really great. Okay, so to recap the points I went over, I talked about always taking homework and quizzes seriously, making a note of the translation of every word you come across that you do not know the meaning to, not using Google Translate, and for learning, using podcasts and articles, and also just practicing with friends and family in that target language. So I really hope this helps any of you in any sort of way. Even if you just take away one tip, I think it would be really beneficial for you, and you'll find short-term and long-term benefits and results to these. And of course, as always, please let me know if these do help you out in the comments, and importantly, if there's anything you'd like me to cover in future videos. But in the meantime, have a lovely rest of your day and happy studying.